How many decisions have you made that your mind approved but your heart rejected? Society teaches early on, think with your head, not with your heart. Logic trumps emotion, reason conquers instinct. The brain commands, and everything else obeys. Itzhak Bentov dedicated years of research to prove the opposite. Bentov was no mystic. He was an inventor, the man who created the cardiac catheter, saved countless lives through medical technology. When someone like that says the heart thinks, it's worth listening carefully. In Stalking the Wild Pendulum, Bentov presents something that challenges all Western education. The heart possesses its own nervous system. 40,000 neurons operate independently of the brain. They don't receive orders. They process information. They make decisions. When you feel something deep in your chest before understanding rationally, you're not imagining it. Your heart is processing data that your brain hasn't reached yet, like a radar detecting what lies beyond the visual horizon. Bentov discovered two types of knowledge operating simultaneously within you: intellectual knowledge, sequential, logical, analytical, and intuitive knowledge, direct, holistic, instantaneous. The first comes from above, the second from below. You've been trained to value only one of them. The consequence? Half of your capacity to understand reality remains unexplored. Like trying to see with only one eye closed, you still see, but you completely lose depth perception. This isn't an invitation to abandon reason. It's a call to recover balance. Bentov wasn't proposing to choose between heart and brain. He proposed synchronizing them. When that happens, you access something beyond both. Bentov observed his own body during years of deep meditation. As a scientist, he didn't accept subjective experience without validation. He measured, he recorded, he compared. He discovered that the heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in the human body, 60 times more intense than the field produced by the brain. This field extends beyond the skin, creating a sphere of influence that can be detected meters away. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's measurable physics. The heart beats about 100,000 times per day. Each beat sends a pressure wave through the entire circulatory system. This wave doesn't just transport blood, it transports information encoded in patterns of frequency and amplitude. Bentov noticed something cardiologists ignored. The heart doesn't maintain constant rhythm. It varies constantly, accelerates, decelerates, adjusts intervals between beats. This variability isn't a flaw or noise in the system. It's the heart responding to stimuli that the conscious brain hasn't processed yet. You meet someone for the first time. Before forming a thought about the person, your heart has already altered its rhythm, accelerated or slowed down, tensed or relaxed. It processed presence, intention, the person's energy through channels that transcend the 5 conventional senses. The brain needs time to analyze facial expression, tone of voice, body language, social context. It constructs interpretation piece by piece. The heart simply knows. Bentov called this intuitive knowledge. In Chapter 9 of Stalking the Wild Pendulum, he explains the mechanism. The heart functions as a biological oscillator. Just as a tuning fork vibrates at a specific frequency and makes other nearby tuning forks resonate, the heart vibrates and detects vibrations in the surrounding field. Each emotion, each intention, each state of consciousness produces a distinct vibratory pattern. The heart detects these patterns directly, without needing translation or analysis. It's direct reception, not indirect processing. The 40,000 neurons of the heart form a complex network. They aren't isolated cells following commands. They possess capacity for learning, memory, independent processing. Cardiac neuroscientists, a field that barely existed when Bentov was writing, later confirmed what he already intuited. The heart has its own intelligence. This cardiac nervous system sends more signals to the brain than it receives from it. The communication is asymmetric. The heart constantly informs the brain about emotional state, presence of threat, quality of environment. The brain may ignore these signals, but they keep arriving. Bentov perceived something more radical. The heart's electromagnetic field carries encoded information, not just intensity, but pattern. Like radio waves carry music, the cardiac field carries state of consciousness. Other people detect this field, even without equipment. You sense when someone is genuinely present or just pretending attention, not through eyes or words, through the field. Think of radio. The brain is like analyzing radio waves mathematically, studying frequencies and amplitudes to deduce what's being transmitted. The heart simply tunes to the station and hears the music. Bentov discovered that people trained in meditation develop cardiac coherence. The heart's rhythm enters harmonic synchrony, creating regular and organized patterns. When this occurs, the brain automatically synchronizes. Brain waves enter coherence as well. It's not the brain commanding the heart. It's the heart organizing the brain. The hierarchy inversion you were taught to accept reveals itself as illusory. The brain processes sequential information well, but the heart perceives global patterns instantly. The brain analyzes trees, the heart sees the forest. Bentov tested this on himself repeatedly. He recorded deep meditative states where the heart assumed the dominant role. The brain continued functioning, but in a subordinate manner. Thoughts arose in response to what the heart had already understood, not as the origin of understanding. He concluded, "You possess two ways of knowing reality. One through the head, slow, deliberate, analytical. Another through the heart, fast, direct, synthetic. Western culture developed only the first and atrophied the second. Result, you question every intuition. You distrust every presentiment. You demand logical proof to validate what your heart already knows, like demanding that vision prove itself through hearing. They're different senses. They operate in different dimensions." Bentov wasn't proposing mysticism. He was describing expanded biology. The heart as a sensory organ beyond a mechanical pump, field detector, frequency reader, processor of non-verbal information. When you ignore this system, you operate with half the available capacity. The question Bentov investigated most deeply was, why do some people develop intuitive knowledge while others remain trapped only in intellect? The answer lies in coherence. The heart of a person in common state varies chaotically, irregular beats, no discernible pattern. It seems random. Bentov demonstrated it's not randomness, it's disorganization. The heart is responding to 1,000 simultaneous stimuli without filter, without prioritization. Imagine an orchestra where each musician plays in different time, disconnected from the others. There's sound, but there's no music. There's activity, but there's no harmony. The heart in coherent state establishes organized rhythm, not constant, that would be brain death, but patterned. Predictable variations, harmonic fluctuations, like synchronized musicians creating symphony. When the heart achieves coherence, something remarkable happens. The brain mirrors this pattern. Brain waves that normally oscillate independently begin to align. Left and right hemispheres synchronize. Different brain regions start operating in unison. Bentov observed this phenomenon repeatedly in experienced meditators. It didn't happen through mental effort. It happened when the person allowed the heart to establish rhythm and the brain simply followed. Complete inversion of the model you learned. Science calls this resonant coupling. When two oscillators come into proximity, the stronger one entrains the weaker to its frequency. Pendulum clocks hanging on the same wall end up beating in synchrony. Women living together synchronize menstrual cycles. Nearby hearts begin beating in similar patterns. Bentov proved that inside your own body, the heart is the dominant oscillator. When organized, it organizes everything else. When chaotic, it spreads chaos. There's a second layer to this discovery. The heart not only detects surrounding fields, but projects its own field. Your internal state becomes external transmission. People around detect it, even without consciousness of it. Have you ever entered an environment and felt immediate tension without a word spoken? It wasn't imagination. It was cardiac fields in discoherent state clashing against yours. You've also encountered people whose presence calms without them doing anything specific. Cardiac coherence radiating, creating a field that induces coherence in others. Bentov called this phenomenon entrainment. It's not manipulation or control, it's field physics. The most coherent system naturally entrains nearby systems to its frequency. There's a profound consequence here. You don't live in isolation. Your heart is in constant dialogue with surrounding fields. It absorbs patterns, projects patterns, enters resonance, generates dissonance. Consciously or not, you're in communication. Bentov tested this hypothesis in ingenious ways. In one of his 1978 lectures, he described an experiment where experienced meditators entered a room with people in varied emotional states. Without verbal or visual contact, only physical proximity. Heart rate monitors registered changes in everyone present. The meditators, whose hearts maintained coherence, gradually influenced the rhythms of others, not through suggestion or conscious intention, simply through presence. This connects with another central concept of Bentov's, the holographic model of reality. If each part contains information of the whole, then your heart doesn't just respond to the local environment. It's in resonance with larger patterns: planetary field, solar field, galactic field. Sounds exaggerated? Bentov demonstrated that the human heart resonates with the Schumann frequency, Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, about 7.83 Hz. When you enter deep coherence, your heart synchronizes with the planet's pulse, not metaphorically, literally. This synchronization explains why people in deep meditation report sensation of union with everything. It's not mystical dissolution of ego, it's physical synchronization with broader fields. You feel connection because, in that moment, you're measuring planetary frequencies through your own cardiac oscillator. Intuitive knowledge, in this perspective, doesn't come from inside nor outside. It comes from resonance. When your heart enters coherence, it tunes into frequencies that your brain alone would never reach. Information that exists in the field becomes accessible, not because you created it, but because you finally managed to detect it. Bentov saw this as humanity's next evolutionary step, not evolving bigger brains, but developing heart-brain synchronization, integrating two knowledge systems that operate in complementary dimensions. Intuitive knowledge emerges from this dialogue. When your heart is in coherence, you detect subtle patterns. You perceive intention behind words. You sense when something is wrong, even when everything seems right. You recognize truth even when you can't yet explain why. Bentov also explored the role of the solar plexus, region between heart and stomach, as an integration center. He didn't see the heart as an isolated entity. He saw the entire torso as a unified perception system. Heart detects, solar plexus processes emotionally, brain translates into thought. When you feel butterflies in your stomach, facing a decision, it's not irrational fear. It's your intuitive system signaling misalignment. Something in the available data doesn't add up, even if it seems logically correct. Your heart has already detected inconsistency that your brain can't yet name. Most people ignore this signal. Bentov suggested the opposite. Trust it, not blindly, but as valid additional information. If heart and brain disagree, don't force agreement. Investigate. Look for what your intellect missed. Bentov reported that in his own decisions, whenever he ignored the heart to follow only logic, he discovered afterward that he had neglected a critical factor. When he respected both channels, intuitive and intellectual, decisions proved solid. The difficulty lies in distinguishing the heart's voice from emotional noise. Fear, desire, anxiety produce sensations in the chest too. How to differentiate? Bentov offered a simple criterion. The heart speaks in sudden clarity, not turbulence. Genuine intuition brings sensation of knowing without necessarily bringing comfort. It can be challenging, but it's not confusing. Reactive emotion is always turbulent, always charged with urgency and confusion. When you feel unquestionable clarity about something, even without logical justification, it's intuitive knowledge. When you feel a whirlwind of contradictory emotions, it's emotional reactivity. There's also temporal difference. Heart intuition arises instantly, complete. You simply know, without gradual construction. Emotional reactivity builds in layers, fed by thoughts, gaining intensity over time. One comes ready, the other manufactures itself. Bentov noticed that creative people, artists, inventors, scientists in moments of discovery, operate predominantly from the heart. Insight doesn't come from sequential analysis. It comes from sudden holistic understanding. The brain later works to translate this understanding into language, mathematics, art. But the origin is in the heart. He saw direct correlation between capacity for cardiac coherence and creative capacity, not because the heart generates creativity, but because creativity requires access to patterns that logical analysis doesn't reach. The heart detects these patterns. The brain articulates them. The practice of cardiac coherence, which we'll explore in practical application, trains exactly this distinction. With time, you learn to recognize when you're operating from the heart and when you're operating from conditioned emotional patterns. Bentov didn't leave abstract theory. He offered concrete method to develop cardiac coherence and access intuitive knowledge. The central technique is disarmingly simple, perhaps too simple for the Western mind to believe it works. It works. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Bring attention to the center of your chest. Don't visualize anything. Don't imagine light or heat. Just place attention there, as if you were listening to the heart from within. Breathe naturally, but bring breath to the chest, as if you were breathing through the heart. Don't force rhythm. Just allow breath and heartbeat to naturally meet. In the first minutes, nothing special happens. Your mind wanders. Thoughts arise. Bring attention back to the chest, repeatedly, without frustration. With practice, something changes. You begin to feel the heart's rhythm more clearly. You're not counting beats. You're perceiving pulse as living presence, not as mechanism. Continue. Maintain attention on the heart. Gentle breath, no effort. At some point, you detect subtle change. The rhythm becomes more regular but not rigid. There's fluency, like constant wave instead of erratic beat. This is coherence beginning to establish itself. When this happens, don't get excited and don't analyze. Simply remain present. Analysis breaks the state. Bentov recommended doing this exercise for 20 minutes daily, not as transcendental meditation where you seek to leave the body, but as practice of presence in the body, specifically in the heart. The goal isn't to turn off the mind, it's to subordinate it to the heart temporarily. Let the heart establish the tone, and the mind simply observe. With weeks of practice, you begin to notice changes in how you make decisions. Facing a choice instead of just analyzing mentally, you naturally check how it feels in your chest. It's not emotionalism, it's consulting a second data channel. If decision brings sensation of expansion in the chest, even if logically it seems risky, there's alignment. If it brings sensation of contraction, even if logically it seems safe, there's misalignment. Bentov emphasized, don't abandon logic. Use both channels. If heart says yes and brain says no, don't act impulsively. But also, don't ignore the heart. Investigate. Look for what your logic might be missing. Look for what your intuition might be detecting. There's a second practical application, more advanced: entering coherence before important interaction. Difficult meeting, delicate conversation, complex decision. Before entering, dedicate 5 minutes to the technique. Establish cardiac coherence. Your electromagnetic field organizes. When you enter the environment, you carry this coherence with you. People around respond to this unconsciously. Conversations that could be tense become more fluid. Not through manipulation, but because your coherent field naturally induces more coherence in nearby fields. Bentov didn't see this as trick or strategy. He saw it as responsibility. You're always affecting surrounding fields. Better to do this consciously and coherently than unconsciously and chaotically. There's still a third application: using the heart as instrument of direct perception. When you meet a new person, before forming mental judgment, feel how your heart responds, accelerates or calms, tenses or relaxes. Don't transform this into binary judgment, good or bad. Use as additional information. Your heart may be detecting something relevant that you'll only understand later. Integration of this practice into daily life requires calibration. In the first months, you'll confuse emotional reactivity with intuitive knowledge. It's part of the process. With time, the distinction becomes clear. Bentov suggested keeping simple record. Note when you felt something strong in your heart about a situation or person. Also note what your mind was thinking at the moment. After weeks or months, review. How many times was the heart right and the mind wrong? How many times was it the reverse? This feedback builds confidence in the intuitive system. You stop seeing intuition as superstition and start recognizing it as legitimate data channel. Not infallible, but valid. There are specific moments where intuitive knowledge becomes critical. Decisions under time pressure, situations with incomplete information, choices involving people rather than just logic. In these scenarios, the brain tends to freeze or force inadequate analysis. The heart has already processed what's available and offers direction. Bentov observed that small children naturally operate from the heart. They sense who's trustworthy, which environment is safe, where there's danger, not through analysis, through direct field detection. As they grow, they're taught to distrust this perception. Don't be silly. There's no such thing as bad feeling. The capacity atrophies from disuse. Reactivating it isn't gaining something new. It's recovering what was lost. The cardiac coherence technique merely removes the layers of conditioning that blocked the natural channel. Bentov applied this in his own work as inventor. Facing complex technical problem, instead of just analyzing logically, he would enter cardiac coherence and let solution emerge intuitively, then verify logically. This combination accelerated discoveries remarkably. The practice doesn't replace expertise, it complements. The heart doesn't solve differential equations, but it can show direction that your intellect alone wouldn't see. Signs of progress appear subtly. You notice you're less anxious facing uncertainty, not because you ignore problems, but because you trust you possess more than one system to navigate reality. Decisions that previously caused paralysis begin to flow naturally. You consult heart and brain, integrate both perspectives, act. Another change, presence. People comment that you seem more present, calmer, even without you mentioning any practice. Your cardiac field is more organized, and others detect this unconsciously. Conversations deepen, conflicts dissolve with less effort. Bentov warned against transforming this into performance or achievement. Cardiac coherence isn't a trophy. It's natural state you're recovering. There's no competition, no superior levels of enlightenment. There's only greater or lesser synchronization between systems that were always available. Practice without expectation of spectacular results. Some days coherence comes easily. Others, the mind won't quiet and the heart seems distant. Both days are valid practices. The very act of trying to reconnect already reconnects, even when it seems it's not working. Bentov discovered something ancient civilizations knew, but the modern world forgot. The heart doesn't just feel, it knows. You have in your chest a sensory organ beyond mechanical pump, field detector, frequency reader, information processor that transcends the five senses. When you synchronize heart and brain, you don't lose rationality. You gain additional dimension of perception. The question that remains isn't whether you possess this capacity. You do. The question is, are you willing to develop what you've atrophied? Each heartbeat is an opportunity. Listen or ignore. Synchronize or remain divided. Bentov knew that intuitive knowledge isn't special gift of some. It's biological function available to all, waiting to be reactivated. How much of reality are you missing by listening to only half the system? The heart beats now as you read this. It's processing, detecting, knowing. The question isn't whether it possesses intelligence. The question is whether you're listening. Bentov spent his life proving scientifically what ancient traditions always knew. You are more than you think, literally. Thought is a valuable tool, but it's not the only one, nor is it the primary one. Your capacity to know reality directly, to detect truth beyond logic, to sense patterns invisible to the eye and inaudible to the ear, this capacity is active now. Each beat is invitation. Responding or ignoring is your choice, made consciously or unconsciously each moment. Bentov won't return to answer additional questions. He left the tools. The practice is available. The knowledge is documented. What's missing isn't information. It's decision to trust that you possess more wisdom within yourself than you were taught to believe.